right?
We are in Pennsylvania. York, Pennsylvania.
York, okay,
Yes.
great.
And we
great.
were given your website, I don't know if we told you this, by a woman named Sue Schaefer who does a lot of research and professional development with primary sources and teaching
Great.
kids about primary sources. So that's where we were first introduced to your website.
Great.
Yes.
I do that myself with students here where I live, and I bring in lots of primary sources around, around a lot of different topics. But whaling is a big one here because it was a big part of our history. So what I've done today, if this is good for you, I pulled out a bunch of artifacts that are some of my favorites, because I wanted to kind of give you guys a sense, and it's a little bit hard because you're far away and we're just doing this by video conference, but because I can't really go show you a whaleboat, so you get a sense of just how big that was, but at the same time how small it was, because the whaleboat was the rowboat that they would go and row out to try and capture the whales in. And so they'd have 6 people on this rowboat. And while it's a big rowboat, if you've ever seen a rowboat before, this is big because they would have 6 people rowing in it. If you imagine them being out on the ocean in this, it's a very small little boat to be out, because the ocean is very wavy and it could be stormy and windy, and it must have been very treacherous and scary, I would think. So I can't really show you that to give you a sense of scale. So what I've done now, however, is pulled out some artifacts that, first I want to talk about the work that the sailors had to do on board, and some of the tools that they would have used during that work. And then I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that they might have done during their time off, their free time.
Okay.
So, the sailors on board the ship, I don't know if you guys looked at the Meet the Crew section, but different people had different jobs. And so most of the people on board were just regular sailors and seamen. And their jobs were to pretty much sail the boat, raise and lower the sails, and keep it clean and tidy, and whatever the officers were telling them to do. And sometimes one thing that they had to do was, from time to time, sometimes the sails would rip, and so they would need to repair them. And so if you can imagine sails being this very heavy, huge canvas material, you can't just take a little needle, and so they had to use very big, thick needles in order to repair them. And in order to do that, they would sometimes wear something like this. I'm going to hold it up. Can you guys see it okay? Yeah. And this is a thing that would protect their hands from the needle going through it. So first of all, you can see I'm wearing these blue gloves. Yep. And that's because I don't want to get the oil that's on my skin onto any of these artifacts, because that will degrade them. So my hands don't usually look like this. So anyway, so this is a thing for sewing the sails, and the man would put it on his hand, and then he would have a little kit. Usually they all have these little kits. Can you see that? This one's made out of rope and wood, and the little cover comes off, and inside would be their needles. Now you can see these are big, fat steel needles. They're a little rusty, in fact.
Right. I was going to ask if they were wooden.
Can you guys see this okay?
Yes.
Great. So it'd be hard to push it with your skin and your thumb, this big fat needle, through this really heavy, thick fabric. So he would have this little tool here, and he'd have it on his hand, so that he could push with that, sort of like a big thimble. So he could push it because he's got this little metal thing right here. And it's made out of leather, so he wouldn't be hurting his skin. So that would be one of the jobs that the sailors might have to do while they were at work. And after they were doing that, sometimes they would have to flatten out the seams, and the seams are where 2 pieces of fabric are sewn together. And so this thing here is called this is made out of wood, and it's called a seam rubber. And so that they would kind of rub along the edge of the, along the seam to flatten, to make it nice and flat. And so sometimes later on when they were carving scrimshaw, sometimes they would make these, because this is kind of an easy, simple shape to carve. So those would be their sort of everyday jobs on the ship, just doing the sailing. But once there was always somebody up in the crow's nest, and if somebody saw that there were whales spouting, then they would say, what would they say? Do you know what the guy would shout down from the crow's nest? If they saw a whale?
What did you say, Jean?
There she blows.
We have whale ahoy and there she blows.
Yeah, there she blows, exactly. That's what they would say. There blows, or there she blows. And when that was the case, then suddenly everybody would stop what they were doing, and they would lower the boats, lower all the whale boats, the rowboats. And so each crew member, he was assigned to a particular whaleboat. So he'd go to his boat, and they'd lower the boats, and they'd start they had a little mast and a sail. They could either sail or they would row to try and get as close as they could. Now, when they were getting close to the whale, one person was called the harpooner, and he would stand in the front of the boat when he was getting really close, and he would have the harpoon. I brought a couple down, and so I'm going to hold it up, and hopefully you can see it. And this is just really the top of it. I'm going to move it so you can see it, because it's not very long. This is just the middle top. It would be attached to a very long wooden pole, and I figured there was no way I could show it to you on Skype, because it's much taller than I am. It weighs a lot. It's probably 8 or 9 feet tall. So the whole harpoon, and then the harpoon would have a rope at the end of it. So this would be the harpoon head, this part here. And so you can see it's got this pointy thing here. It's got these this is called a two-flued, double-flued harpoon. It's got these 2 points here. This would be the sharp, pointy top, sort of like an arrow. And so when the harpooner, when the boat got close to the whale, the harpooner would stand up in the front of the boat, and he would take that big, long 8 or 9 foot pole with this on top of it, and he would heave it. He would throw it at the whale, and hopefully it would stick in the whale's body, and so that they could then start to really catch it. So what do you think would happen to a whale once the harpoon was stuck in his side? If you were a whale, what would you do? Anybody?
Okay, you want to, Samuel? What would you do?
I would try my best to escape, but if they're that close and they already struck me, I might have been bigger than I already are, as strong as I was before they hit me with the harpoon, and I would try to get out as fast as I could.
That's exactly what the whales. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I asked if you heard that.
I did hear that, and that's exactly what the whale would try and do. He would try and get away, but at the end of the harpoon was a big long rope, and so he'd end up dragging that big heavy whaleboat with those 6 men in it. And after a while, he would get tired. And so the next thing that would happen, once he was really tired, then they'd be able to pull the rope in and get themselves close to the whale again. And the boat steerer, the man who would have been steering the boat, he would then switch places with the harpooner. And he would take another tool, again on a long rod, on a long pole, and this one, you can see this is a very pointy top, and it would have been very sharp. And again, this is just the head of it, and it would have been on a long wooden pole. And he would know where to stab the whale so that it would kill him quickly with this thing. It's called a lance. These would be very sharp. In fact, in order to keep all these tools sharp, while they were in the bottom of the whaleboat, while they'd be chasing the whale, they had these special little wooden covers for them. So here's one here, and this one I'm going to have to show it in different. I don't know if you can see the whole thing, so I'm going to move it around a little bit. And so this one is for a lance, because they would have kept this really, really sharp, and so they would be able to put this into it so that it's protected while they're rolling around, so it's not rattling around and getting dull, because they want it to be a very sharp tool. It's made out of wood. I have another one here for the harpoon. So this is a little different, but it's kind of the same shape as that double flute harpoon head. So it would have sort of fit right in there like that. So that would have just kept it from getting dull. I want to show you another harpoon, because has anybody ever gone fishing? And sometimes you've got a fish on your hook, but then sometimes they get away. Well, that sometimes would happen to the whales as well. So in the 1800s, a man named Lewis Temple, he devised a new kind of a harpoon head, and it's called the toggle harpoon. And so this one goes, so it's kind of narrow, so it could easily go into the whale. But then once the whale started to go away and the boat is hanging onto the rope, it would swivel out, and so it would be then hard for it to come out of the whale's body.
You know, we saw this one as a class. This is one of the things that we looked at, but we didn't realize that it opened like that. That's really neat.
That's right, because you can't see on the website. Yeah, so that's why it's called, it toggles. That's why it's called the toggle harpoon. So this was a big invention. And Lewis Temple was a blacksmith who lived in New Bedford, Mass. He was an African-American person, but he was a free African-American. He wasn't a slave. So this was a very important invention that he came up with for the whole whaling industry. I wanted to show you another harpoon that I think is pretty funny, actually, and I want to see if you can figure out what might have happened to it. Again, this is just the harpoon head. You might have seen the picture of it on the website. Yeah. Any idea why? How come this is bent like this?
Ryan, nice and loud.
The whale was probably trying to get away.
Louder, honey.
The whale was probably trying to get away, and it bent.
That's it. That's what happened. The whale tried to get away, and he probably dove down, and he probably went around in circles, and this thing bent. So this, to me, gives us an idea of just how strong the whales were. Because I can't bend this. I don't think any person could bend this just with their own hands. It's made out of iron. It's very hard. So it just shows you how strong the whales were in order to make these get bent like this. After they caught the whale, and after the whale was killed, they would then tie the whale to the whaleboat, and then they would row back to the boat, to the whale, the big ship, and tie it on the side. And then they would start cutting the blubber off the whale. And so I couldn't bring in my big tools, my blubber cutting tools and things like that, but I did bring you down this one here, it's a little blubber hook, because eventually they'd get smaller pieces of blubber, and they wouldn't want to necessarily pick them up with their hands too much, so they'd use these tools to kind of hook it onto it and then be able to move it from place to place. So this is called a blubber hook.
That was another one that we had talked about. And I don't know if you heard them when you were talking. They were saying, blubber hand hook, blubber hand hook.
Great. See, because know so much already. So then they would take these chunks of blubber, and then they'd boil them down. And here at the museum we have these big try-pots. We have a try-works, a replica try-works, but with real try-pots. And they are these big, huge they're big iron pots that they would have had a fire underneath so that they could heat up the oil to heat the blubber up so that the oil would melt, and then they'd put them in the barrels. I wanted to show you a couple other things here. Everybody would be involved in the cutting up and the boiling out of the blubber and stowing it down below. The officers, they often had different jobs, and the captain and the first mate particularly one of their jobs was to keep a record of the whole voyage. And so they would write in a logbook. And so I have here a logbook, and this happens to be the log of the ship Iris. And this was a Captain Spooner. Actually, I'm not going to show you this one. I'm going to show you another one first. But I am going to show you that one.
Okay.
This is another one from the ship Virginia.
Oh, I saw that one.
Did you hear him?
And
go ahead, Sam. What'd you say?
I saw that logbook on the website.
okay, great. It's on the website. So here you can see, I don't know, hopefully you'll be able to see it well enough. But he would, and this was Captain Manter kept this one, the captain. And so he would write in it every day, sort of like a journal. And hopefully you can, I don't know if you can see that, but he would write the date, and he would often write about what the weather was and how the winds were and what they did that day. And every once in a while, some of these captains would sometimes draw some pictures. Like this one here has, he must have been close to an island. So he drew this little picture of what the island looked like from him out at sea. So you can see there's the water's edge, and that's kind of the shape of the island that he drew, and he used like watercolors.
Joe has a quick question for you about that.
Yes.
If it's okay. Nice and loud, Joe. Oh, what's your comment?
I can sort of see the writing.
You sort of see the writing?
Yeah. It's probably hard to see it here. Now, sometimes they would have, they had these little stamps, and if they saw a ship, I don't know if you see this little ship picture here, if they saw a ship out at sea, they would often put the little stamp in the book, and they would make mention, saw the ship such and such. I want to find some other ones here. If they saw a whale, sometimes they would see a whale. I don't know if this one has any. If they saw a whale and didn't catch it, they had a stamp that was just a whale's tail. If they saw a whale and caught it, they would have a stamp, and here it is right here. So that's a whole whale. And you can see in the center of the whale, it's got a little hole, and he would write down how many barrels of oil they got out of that whale. And so Captain Manter, not only would he do these little things in his journal, but at the end of his journal, let me find that page because it's kind of cool, he kept a record of every whale that he caught.
Yeah, I saw that page.
Will saw that, he said.
Great. So here you go. Here's his page. So he put all his stamps in there. Those are stamps. Yep.
Okay, those are stamps. He wanted to know what was coming out of the blowhole. Those are stamps?
Oh, no, the red out of the blowhole, he took his, probably his red watercolors, and he painted that red so it looks like blood coming out. Because that's what would happen when they killed the whale, that they would end up blowing blood out of their blowhole. So they knew that he was about to die. So that's what he added some watercolor to this. Over on this page, you can see some of the whale's tails. So these are all the ones that he saw but didn't catch.
Oh.
Wow. They didn't catch a lot.
No, they did. There's lots that they saw that they didn't catch because it was hard to catch them. Now, what I have here is actually this is the back side of it, and this is the wooden stamp. Can you see what is a stamp of? We might not be able to.
No, it's mostly just like a black.
Just black. So this is actually a little stamp of a ship. So this is what they would have used this stamp. They would have inked it and put it down in there, used it to make the ship shape in their logbook. I see somebody asking a question.
Nice and loud.
How did they not get disgusted of all the blood?
Well, I bet they were kind of used to it, and if they were disgusted, I bet they wouldn't go on a whaling voyage. So that's probably why. I mean, you and I think it's pretty disgusting, and we think it's actually pretty horrifying that they would have been killing these magnificent animals, because that's what we know, and nowadays we have electricity, so we don't need that whale oil. We have other kinds of oil that make our electricity now. So sometimes they would. Oh, I wanted to show you in this other logbook. Sometimes they would also do some artwork. So here is another logbook, and this man here, he was a good artist, and so he did some paintings of what he was seeing. So this one here is that you can see the whale ship, and you can see in the front, and this is on the website too, so you can get a better look at it up close. But you might be able to see up toward the bottom. You can see all the little whaleboats. I don't know if you can see it well, but so this is really, he was drawing and painting things that he saw. So this would be there and around a bunch of whales, and all the whaleboats are catching them. And if you look at the boat, the ship, you can see a big blanket piece of blubber being hauled up onto the deck. So this is the kind of artwork that sometimes they did. So when they had time off, anybody, they would probably, whether they were an officer or a regular seaman, you would take some time, and you could, you had your time to yourself, so you'd do the things that were fun. You might play cards with your friends, you might play some music and sing some songs, and some people did some artwork, and sometimes you'd write letters home and that sort of thing. But then sometimes, especially when they're coming home, they would start to want to bring home some sort of souvenirs and gifts for their families. So they would have been collecting all these whales' teeth from the sperm whales and other pieces of bone and things that they could carve into keepsakes. Wow. And sometimes those things that they would carve would be actual sort of useful things. So like this one here, you can see. This is the artery, the scrimshaw part that was carved, and this person put this big metal spike into it, and this was called an awl, and it was used for all kinds of things, to make holes in wood and fabric, to maybe to pry things apart. So this would have been a scrimshaw, sort of a good handy tool. Here I have a very small little block. And this is on the website too. And so this would have been you would put your strings to this, and blocks and tackle were used to raise heavy things and make it easier to raise them, because it's not quite so heavy, because you've got the strings going more than one way, and it rolls. But it looks like there's a question.
There's a couple. Do you want to go first, Sam?
Okay. If the sailors wanted to write letters home, how in the world would they get the letters home if they were out in the middle of nowhere?
That's a very good question. So when a couple of ships would meet each other out at sea, sometimes they would stop and have a conversation. Sometimes they would even take the time to go back and forth between the ships and have a sort of a party. And if they took the time to go back and forth, if one ship was heading home sooner than the other ship, they'd give any mail to head home, because it would take 6 months sometimes for letters to get back and forth. There was a place off of the coast of South America called the Galapagos Islands, and I've heard that there was actually a big mailbox where so the ships would often stop there. They'd stop and maybe go get water, but they'd leave mail and they'd get mail. So if somebody was coming by, heading back to New Bedford or Martha's Vineyard, they take the mail that was going back, and if so they leave mail there too for other ships to pick up.
Wow, that's hard to believe, especially today when they're used to email and texting and just instantaneous. So it could be 6 months before you heard from your grandmother or somebody at home, a friend. Yep.
Sometimes, I know on Nantucket, they had a letter. I thought this was pretty funny. They had a letter over there where the captain's wife was at home on Nantucket, and she wrote a letter, and she said, "Where's the shovel? I can't find the shovel," or something like that, or the axe. And so then 6 months or 8 months later, the captain writes back, his letter gets to her, and he says, "What do you need it for?" And he didn't tell her where it was. He just said, "What do you need the shovel for?" So I thought that was pretty funny because it'd be a long, it'd be like take a year sometimes to have a couple of letters go back and forth.
Oh, that's funny. Will had a question as well.
What is scrimshaw?
Ah, okay. Scrimshaw. Scrimshaw is the carvings that sailors on whale ships would have done. They would have carved either the baleen, those big plates in the some of the whales' mouths, or their bones, their real bones. You know, there's rib bones and things like that, and it's kind of like ivory, but it's bone, and they could carve it into keepsakes. So I've just shown you a couple. I got a couple more. As I said, they often were, sometimes they were tools, but sometimes they were sort of beautiful things. So here, this one here is called a jagging wheel or a pie crimper. And can you see it? And it's got this little wheel here, and they would have used it to cut pastry. You know, if they're making pie crust, then they could take it and they'd run it along the edge to cut it into the shape and size that they wanted it. So this is a very simple one. Some of them are just really beautiful. They have some of these little forks on them. Sometimes they have inlaid dark baleen material. So this one is pretty small and pretty simple, but it's just a good example, though, of something that would have been, you know, they would have been thinking of their mothers or their wives or their daughters or their girlfriends, who would have been the people in the family who would have done the cooking. Okay. I have one more here, and this one is really remarkable. So this is actually carved out of a walrus tusk. So you see that shape there? And if you see on this side, it's got all these little holes. Does it remind you of anything? A game you might have ever seen?
What do you think, Annika?
I didn't hear.
Dominoes.
Oh, not dominoes, but these are little tiny holes and little pegs would have fit in them. It's a card game called cribbage, and this would have been the way you would count your points. And so some people, maybe at home your parents have a cribbage board, but usually they're made out of wood. But this one's made out of this walrus tusk. And the person who made this one also carved these amazing animals. Can you see those animals? And they're mostly from the Arctic. Sort of, are you able to see this at all?
Very well.
See, over here we have some more. I think we have some images on the website about this one. Yeah, on this side, he carved what looks like a little village. All these little houses. So after they make the little carvings, they carve it and then they rub sort of the black is probably soot and oil, and they must have taken some ink because this one has some other colors, some red and some green, and they would have rubbed it in and then they would have wiped off the excess so that only the color only went into the places where they had carved. So that's what scrimshaw is. It's carvings out of bone. Sometimes they would take the whale's teeth. In fact, let me see if I have some teeth. Can I grab them? You got a minute?
Yes.
They're right here.
Okay.
They're just in another box.
What was your question, Okay. We'll ask that before she shows us. Ms. Cole, Anna had a question about the piece that you just showed.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hannah.
How long do you think it would have took them to make it?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't have any idea. I have no idea because they're just some beautiful things. Here is a whale's tooth. Okay? And so a lot of this tooth would have been down below his gums, and this part would have probably the stuff that would have stuck out, just like our teeth. We have some of our teeth that part of our teeth show, but we have a lot of part of our teeth are down below our gum line, so we can't probably at least as long. So this would be a whale's tooth. So what they would have done is they would have taken one of these teeth and they would have polished this so that it was really smooth, and then they would have gone and started carving little pictures in them. And so you see these a lot. So this one has a ship on it, and it's got a little whale there. It's got Lady Liberty here. So they often had all kinds of things, maybe some of the things that they saw, but maybe oftentimes pictures of people that they might know, or just beautiful women, or things like that. So this is what it would have been what they call a scrimshawed tooth. And these are quite, you see a lot of these actually around, but again, these would have been, I don't know how long this would have taken, probably a while. And they would have, as I understand, they would have just used their jackknife to do it. Do I see another question?
We have a few more. We'll take Ryan and then Emma. Then.
Do you know if anybody ever got blood all over them from the whales?
Get blood all over them?
Yeah.
Oh, I can imagine it. Probably. Blood and grease and oil, and it must have been just really messy.
And they don't have indoor plumbing. We're not thinking like cruise ship here.
No indoor plumbing. They would have.
Hello?
They just use that for cleaning. I mean, for eating and drinking, cooking.
What would they? I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. What was that?
They would have washed with salt water. They wouldn't have used fresh water to wash.
And you have to remember there were no, when we're thinking of no plumbing, okay, so they weren't able to shower. Were they able to use the bathroom the way that we know?
No. There was probably a little place where they'd lean over the back side of the boat to go.
That's rough living. Okay. Emma had a question. Nice and loud, Em.
What is the whale's tooth kind of like a piece of paper?
Do you mean is it soft?
Like,
oh.
No, like, is that what they drew on?
To tell a story, or for their artwork, or to tell a story. She wants to know if they used it like we use paper.
Oh, no, I think this would be a special piece of artwork. Well, this was artwork. This was a kind of artwork. But it wouldn't, well, in a sense, yeah, because he's carving things that he saw. He's deciding what kind of picture he wants to have on it. So, yes, in that sense, but they might have only had one or two to use on a voyage or something, because they had to share. And there's 30 people, so I don't know how many of these they had. And probably not everybody did it.
Well, I think you have to have a lot of
I want to show you one last thing.
Yep.
And that is Laura's journal.
Everybody saw that.
Okay. So it's not very big.
No.
It's very small. When you open it up, it's made out of this sort of gray-blue paper, and which is very common back then. They had a lot of paper. A lot of the journals were this bluish paper. And at the beginning, and you can see this on the website for sure, the beginning she's writing in printing. She's not writing in cursive. She's using a pencil. Later on, as she's gotten older, she's probably 9 at this point, she's starting to write in cursive. So that's her little journal. It's not very long. What was it, like 36 pages long or something?
40?
She's using an ink pen. Because back then they would have to dip the ink, dipping a pen into an inkwell in order to, they didn't have a big pen like we do. So that's her little journal. I did want to show it to you because it's pretty special.
I was expecting it to be bigger because she was a small child, and I thought she would need a bigger space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. She was writing, her writing was actually really wonderful when we think about it. Yep. Her printing was pretty careful, but again, this was the work that she was, this was her schoolwork.
Yep.
And so her mother was telling her, I want you to be really careful. And I guess she could erase it doesn't look like there's any erasures here. She definitely makes some spelling mistakes and things like that, but for the most part, it's a pretty special little artifact, I think.
Do you mind if we have another question or two? Would that be okay?
Oh, sorry, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay.
You cut out a little bit there.
Anybody that didn't get a chance to ask a question that has one? Okay. Did you have one, Andrew? Okay, what was your question? Sit up, kiddo.
How many whale teeth do you think they would have on a whale?
Someone's going to have to repeat that for me. I didn't hear.
How many whale teeth do you think they would have or keep on a whale ship?
Well, that would depend on how many sperm whales they caught, because the sperm whales were the ones that had the whale's teeth. So they, and I think there were something like 36 teeth in a whale or something, or now I can't remember exactly, 18. Get to the website and find out how many teeth they had.
Okay.
So depending on how, they would definitely always keep them because the sailors like to carve them for keepsakes.
Is it okay if we do two more? There's two more
Sure,
people that didn't
absolutely.
have a question. Okay,
Yep.
Brant and Pratal. We'll let Pratal go first because she's the lady. Nice and loud, dear.
Oh, I forgot.
She forgot her question. We'll have Brant go. Nice and loud, Brant.
Did the sailors always, like, how many whales do you think they would get a year?
So like an average number of whales per year?
Oh, that's a good question too. They, I think that when they, I don't know actually. Let me look at Captain Manter's book here and see if I can take a quick guess. This wouldn't have been in 1 year though. It would have been probably a few years.
Okay. And you notice, guys, that she's used what's a sign of intelligence? Yep. We always say that using your resources is a sign of intelligence. So you're being a very good example for us. Thank
There you
you.
go. If you don't know the answer, because most of us don't. Let me find that page. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, he's got it down here. It's looks like they caught 36 whales, and they did not catch 45 whales. So, because he numbered these, and I would say so say that it's 36. So maybe they caught 12 a year, but I think that I know in reading Captain Manter's logbook that there's a long time where they didn't even see any whales, and he was very upset about it.
Right.
So, so maybe that was a low amount for a voyage. We'd have to go and look at all kinds of records to figure out.
Right. The average.
That answer.
Now, Pratal looks like she remembered her question.
Great.
So is that okay? Go
Yes.
ahead, dear.
What do the other whales have instead of teeth?
They have baleen. Did I talk about that last time? They have these plates that hang down from their mouth. And I'm going to grab a piece for you so you can see it.
Do you remember we said it was kind of flexible? Do you remember? Okay. Yeah. So Pratal's like, yeah, right. Now she remembers, but we have never seen it.
Okay, well this is a small piece. It's very dry, so this is hard. When it was in the whale's mouth, it would have been like our noses, flexible. Feel your nose, you can kind of bend it. So that's what it would have been made out of, that kind of material. So it's got these little hairs on it. I'm going to hold it really close to the camera. And that's what it would have been. Those little hairs would have been used to help sift out the little krill and the little marine animals that they would have eaten for food. So they would have had many, many of these hanging from the tops of their jaws, plates after plate, and that would have been their filters. That's why. So this is a small piece. It's from probably a pilot whale. So the ones that come from the whales that they were hunting were very large. I think there's some photos on the website. There's one photo of I think a bowhead whale up in Alaska, and there's a picture of a man standing in front of a jawbone, and he's tiny, and the whole jaw with all the baleen hanging is very large. And they would keep this. This was important. They used this for. It was kind of the plastic of the day. So this was another a product that they would bundle this up and put it down in the hold because they would sell it, and it was worth a lot of money. Any other questions?
Well, we could probably be here all day, but everybody that has not yet asked a question has been able to do that.
Great.
So we would like to thank you because you helped bring this to light for us a little bit better.
You're welcome. And hey, Amy?
Yes?
If you can give me your mailing address, I'll send you guys some of, we have these little bookmarks.
Uh-huh.
And I'm happy to send you a bunch of them for your class.
That would be wonderful.
Okay?
Yep. We have 22 students.
No, we have 21. And then Kenny missed me.
No, there's 22 plus